We have here a real icon of the tech scene from Ireland who's gone global, now based in San Francisco with Stripe. Stripe is trying to transform payments globally in 18 countries at the moment, taking 139 currencies. As president, John Collison is only 24, but with your brother Patrick, you've created a company that has raised about 140 million in funding so far. The last valuation was 1.75 billion.
That's right.
Which is not a bad start, with about 175 employees.
That's right.
And every time I pick up a newswire, there's another. Stripe is partnering with Apple over payment. Stripe is partnering with Alipay. Stripe is operating the buy button for Twitter, the buy button for Facebook. How big, potentially, could Stripe be?
The way we think about it is how big will the payments market be? And the online payments market is still really immature. We think it's going to be very big. Most of our spending right now happens offline, and that's starting to shift. It's not just e-commerce, it's not just things you buy at your computer. Payments in store, payments around you, you get into a cab these days, it's handled by your phone. It's very clear that all our payments are moving online. For a long time, there wasn't the technology to make it easy to build apps like that, to build services. So the market is clearly going to be very big. Will Stripe be the company that does it? I mean, obviously, I hope so, but I think that's the question that remains to be seen. The fact that all our payments are moving to mobile, all our payments are moving online, I think that's kind of a given at this stage.
It's a very loud space. There's a lot of competition from incumbents as well as small startups. What do you think will give Stripe the edge?
The reason we started Stripe was we felt like nobody understood the developer, nobody understood the people who were actually building the apps, building the web services in question. Before Stripe, you basically had two options. You could turf your users over to PayPal and have them pay there on that side, or you could build everything yourself from scratch. So if you're operating a subscription business that charges something like Netflix, charges users every month, you were there building your own billing engine, building a way to store all your customer data, storing credit card data. And so we started building the tools, building the code snippets that we always wanted as developers. And it turned out a lot of other people wanted that too.
So you're working with Apple over the last few weeks. You're working with Alipay in China. Which of those do you see as being more significant to the future of Stripe?
I think they're on slightly different time horizons. Apple Pay launched just a few weeks ago, and already it's really starting to take off. Apple announced that I think more than 1 million people are using it now. We were very happy to see at the time of launch, a majority of the apps in the App Store were powered by Stripe, the ones that supported Apple Pay. And so already we're starting to see businesses scrambling to support this because it makes mobile shopping so much easier than before. Before, you're pecking your details into an app, you're entering all your credit card information manually. Apple Pay means it's a tap on the thumbprint sensor. It's only in the US right now, but it's very clear where this is going to go. Alipay, on the other hand, we think of as something that has huge long-term potential, but something that needs to ramp up over time. Right now, if you're a consumer in China, you more or less buy entirely from Chinese websites. And we think that's going to change. And so what our Alipay deal is about is enabling Stripe merchants, be they in the US, Europe, Australia, wherever, we're now unlocking hundreds of millions of Chinese consumers for them who they couldn't sell to before.
And when you talk to Mark Zuckerberg about his vision for payments through Facebook, what's on his mind?
Okay, so the social commerce stuff is interesting. And I think where this stems from is people moving to spending huge amounts of their time on mobile devices. And so, you have your mobile phone, you're browsing through Twitter, you're browsing through Facebook. Before, if you saw something that you liked, maybe you saw an ad, maybe someone posted something cool, you click through to it, you get to the website, and again, you have these 5 or 6 different steps to actually go and buy it. Whereas if Facebook already has your credit card on file for whatever reason, the idea that you can buy something in the feed right there, that means that presumably more people will do this if you make it significantly easier. And so I think the way the social companies are thinking about the payment space is that given that people are spending so much time on their platforms, it's a natural evolution to make it easy for merchants to sell them, rather than drawing out the process into 5 or 6 steps.
So the speed of growth of companies like Stripe is pretty worrying to the conventional banks.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things about the internet is that it enables companies to go from 0 to, getting to a very large scale in a very short amount of time. Of course, that's the danger of the internet as well, right? Is that we are very conscious as Stripe that you're only as good as your most recent product, and that someone else can come along before you even know it and be attacking you.
So what's the biggest threat to Stripe?
I don't think there's a single threat. I think there's a number of things that we're keeping in mind. I mean, the one people always bring up, I don't think it's actually a threat, is Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is just taking over the financial space, or certainly the financial conversations right now. But we view it as actually a pretty exciting thing, where people who don't have credit cards, people who didn't have access to the financial networks before, can now transact, and we want to unlock that.
So you're transacting with Bitcoin through Stripe. Are you personally investing in Bitcoins?
We are not, and I am not. But we think the way we can kind of make Bitcoin succeed is the place we have leverage is actually supporting it for merchants. And so we launched a Bitcoin beta earlier this year, and it's been cool to see we have some companies like Grooveshark and Namecheap using it. Again, the way those merchants think about it, I think, is that this is a way of addressing a new slew of customers, especially internationally, who might not have been able to buy from them before.
So you talk about us being on an early stage of this journey. Let's look maybe 10 years away. What will the payment process be? Will we even notice we're paying?
I think you'll see, one, basically everything happening on mobile phones. And two, I think you'll see the identity problem being solved. We spend so much time when we buy today telling someone who you are, be it keying in information or something like that. I think things like Apple Pay, things like Facebook and Twitter, all these companies have the ability to store your identity and give it to the merchant in a useful way, which means that buying something on a phone will go from taking 5 minutes to taking a few seconds.
Trouble is, there's lots of guys in China and Russia and Romania who are trying to access those accounts. How secure can we make the future?
I think any payments company needs to have security in its DNA, and I mean, certainly Stripe does. One of the first technologies we launched was this thing called Stripe.js, which means that when you buy off a Stripe merchant, your credit card is not actually hitting that merchant's servers. And I think that's actually pretty important. The growth of online commerce meant that suddenly your credit card data was being stored with all these different merchants, and it was in all these different places. And you saw that reflected in the ramp up of giant breaches. There weren't credit card data breaches of the same scale in the 1990s because your credit card data wasn't in so many places. And so what we're very focused on is one, the security of that data, and two, making sure that we actually offer as a service to merchants, storing that data for them so that they don't have to.
So when's the last time you were aware of a breach of Stripe's own systems?
Stripe has not been breached that we know of.
Pretty impressive. So you've got an extraordinary roster of investors, from Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Sequoia and Khosla, and now there's a fund to promote other companies in the Stripe ecosystem. And it looks like you're moving from a product company to a platform company. So what is the vision there?
Yeah, so the fund is an investment firm in the US, General Catalyst, who are longtime investors in Stripe. They're allocating $10 million to invest in companies built on Stripe or built for Stripe. We have a product called Stripe Connect, which allows you to link your Stripe account with third-party services, and they can access the data immediately. We think this is exciting for Stripe because it makes the Stripe product better, right? It means that now when you use Stripe, you have access not only to the features that we build, but this whole ecosystem of apps. It's sort of like, remember the iPhone when it came out, it was pretty good, and then when they launched the App Store, it was like 10 times better. Same thing here. Your business data, I mean, we have in Stripe is everyone's revenue data, is their customer data, things like this. It's hugely useful data that they should be analyzing, they should be working with, they should be spending time seeing how they can increase their revenues. People can now build apps that in one click let them do that. From General Catalyst's point of view, I think why it's exciting is if you are building a business-focused app now, to get someone up and running on that app, the data entry part was actually significant, right? The person would have to be in Excel or maybe spend a few hours getting the data in the right format. Now, if you want to build an app for businesses, you can get all the data you need from a customer in just a few seconds. I think that's the big watershed moment for them and why they're eager to invest in this space.
So Jack Dorsey also used to, when he was launching Square, talked about it was really a data business. You understand real-time transactions. Can there be more than one winner in this kind of space? Is it going to be Square or Stripe or some new third party that hasn't come in yet?
Yeah, people always talk about payments as a winner-take-all market, which is odd given that there are so many players. Like it does not appear to have been up to now. When you say about Stripe being a data company, I still think of Stripe first and foremost as a product company, but what this platform approach is doing is enhancing the product, right? It's meaning that no matter what you're doing, there are apps and services tailored to you, and so it's just making the product much better. I mean, I guess you can call that a data or a product company, depending on which way you look at it. I think there will be multiple winners.
So you dropped out of Harvard, your brother Patrick dropped out of MIT, you were teenage entrepreneurs, you started early. What kind of parents let their kids drop out of Ivy League schools because they got an idea for a business?
Yeah, I think, our parents were always very supportive. It was definitely an unusual path. I remember I dropped out briefly of secondary school here and then dropped out again of college, and so maybe once you form the habit, the repeat conversations are easier. But I think they realized that we were taking a somewhat unusual path and were willing to let us go down it and see what happened.
And what do you think it was in your parents that was different from most parents? What characteristics were they nurturing within you?
We should have them up on stage. I think
you can call her up if you want me.
Phone a friend. No, I think part of it is, both my parents started their own businesses, and I think there's some amount of them having, them having seen that and what it takes. And I think as well, most parents want kids to follow their passions, and this is what we were passionate about. So
when you were learning coding as a kid, they supported you by getting a satellite internet connection.
That's right. Yeah, we grew up in the countryside, just outside of Neenah, and there was no cable internet. There was no wired internet available. It had to come in via satellite. It was very slow. You learned to type accurately on that internet.
So when you have kids, do you think you can help shape their entrepreneurial mindset, or do you think it's something instinctive?
I would make a terrible parent, I'm pretty sure, but I think you have to let people go explore what they want to do.
Could Stripe have stayed in Ireland? You moved to San Francisco. Europe is losing a lot of the potentially multi-billion-dollar companies to the US.
Yeah, people ask that a lot. I think the investment scene has come on a huge amount here. You can raise money for a company that you potentially couldn't have 5 years ago. I think the startup scene has come on a huge way here. I mean, I don't know if you've taken a look through the hall yet, but there are, tons of startups here and some very good ones exhibiting. The reason that we moved out to San Francisco was all our potential customers were there, a lot of the potential employees were there, and we wanted to be near them. So Silicon Valley has this very strong network effect, and I think that's what drives companies there. I think the thing that Dublin has going for it as a startup hub is once you start to get that network effect going, it starts to build on itself. And you see now, companies come to Dublin because there's so much talent here, because so many companies are already here, because so many of the facilities are here. The network effect is both a blessing and a curse, where it can act against you, but I think we're starting to see in Dublin it acting for us.
Last question. You've recently hired from Google Claire Johnson as head of business operations. Sounds like a very grown-up role. Does that mean the company's changing, you're growing up?
Yeah, with Claire, I mean, what we were really excited about was she has a wealth of experience in, before now running the self-driving car team at Google, and before that scaling out the ad sales team at Google. And so as we look, at growing Stripe's team, we were 2 people 4 years ago, we're now 175 people, and that team is still growing. I think there's a lot of mistakes companies can make. I think it's certainly a mistake to try and reinvent the wheel, rethink everything from scratch. And so she has very much done that before. She has a huge amount of experience in building kind of long-term, enduring, sustainable companies, and that's what we want to create.
Running a self-driving global finance giant. Please can we thank John Collison.